for Guitar World magazine. And we have with us today Brian from Paul Reed Smith. I mean, we talked a little bit with Paul yesterday, but Brian comes in bearing gifts. Some new Paul Reed Smith models. And what he has in his hand right now is perhaps the most controversial guitar of the past year or two.
It could be, yeah.
It could be none other than the infamous John Mayer Paul Reed Smith collaboration. And for those guys that don't know much about it, I just want Brian to sort of talk a little bit about it and set the record straight on this guy.
Sure. Okay. So, even though it's not brand new, it came out in March. This is its first NAMM, and there are 4 new colors available. So there's 8 in total. But this collaboration was, John had met Paul in working on what became the Super Eagle model, which is what he uses for the Dead & Company.
Yes.
And the two of them just hit it off, and they started working ideas of building a signature model for him, taking some of his favorite aspects of his different vintage Strats and Pauls, and two guys really cut of the same cloth. They are like the details are everything to them.
Yeah, I know. When I actually did an interview with John Mayer for a cover story for Guitar World a few months back, and it was fascinating to me. Like, you could look at this thing and say, oh, this is a traditional guitar, but sort of every bit of it has been rethought in some sort of interesting kind of way. The cutaway, for example.
Yeah, the cutaway, again, that's also, the look of it is kind of what you expect on a Paul Reed Smith, but it also gives you a different access up on the higher parts of the fingerboard. The little rounded heel is so much more comfortable up there. I mean, Paul picks his own designs apart over the years. Like, if you play a custom 24 now and you play one from 10 years ago and one 10 years before that, there are subtle differences. He's constantly looking for ways to, fine tune and what can he, and so it just he does that with everything he does, amps, guitars, everything. So this is just their version of it's in a signature model. It's people ask Paul all the time, like, why did you do this? Why did you do this radius? And he's like, well, that's what John wanted. It's a signature guitar. But it's I grew up playing Strats. I just it's a home base to me. So and there's the 594 from PRS I absolutely love. But when I got this in my hand, it was like home. It was like the best, guitar of its, of its like that I personally had ever played. So
well,
I love
it. The one thing that is sort of, I've played this guitar, and one thing I really love is the clarity. Like, when you play Strats, you don't tend to use that middle pickup.
Right.
But on this, I love the sound of the middle pickup.
I'm the same way.
And I was convinced that somehow there was something different, but all 3 pickups are essentially the
exactly
same pickups, right?
Yep, yeah. I was surprised at that too. I asked Paul about the wind, because it seemed like they had wound each pickup for its position, and he's like, nope, it's the same. And he was talking about, back in the day, there wasn't a bridge wound pickup, a neck wound pickup. They wound pickups and they put them in a bucket and they grabbed 3 and they put them in a pick guard in the early days, and it's if a pickup is voiced and wound a certain way, it's going to sound good no matter where you put it under the string.
Yep. Yeah. That was the idea behind it. It is a fantastic guitar. I love the way it sounds. But you said that they introduced a few new colors now. I know the white one has been around, and then there's the silver one.
So the first 4, when they were released in March, there was Frost. This is Frost. Onyx is the black. Horizon is a red, and the silver is called Tungsten. So they're creative names,
yes,
but for colors that we know and love. And the 4 new ones are equally interesting in the naming category, and they're absolutely beautiful. There's a green called Orion Green, a blue called Dodgem Blue. There's one called Mock Sand, which is almost kind of a tannish, not even really Olympic white. And then a gold one called Golden Mesa. I'm still memorizing those names, but they're the green and the blue both have like the look of almost an aged finish, like that, kind of like how some of those '60s tints would age with the nitro.
Right.
Yeah, they're all. It's hard to pick a favorite.
I'm assuming you can go check it out on Paul's website.
It's probably right on the homepage. It's those colors were released this week, so I've seen them all over the internet. They should be. I'm sure they're on your site too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you, like, if you wanted to buy one of those things, do you have to go through a dealer, or can you order them online?
Well, Paul doesn't sell direct, so everything
Right.
has to go through a dealer.
Gotcha.
But you don't have to be a signature dealer to get these. The only thing is that there is a little bit of a wait for these. I have no idea how long the new colors will be. They had no idea what to expect as far as the initial orders, and they certainly outsold anybody's expectations.
Nice.
So, I think the only complaint people who had was the wait to get one. They're definitely hitting the stores. I can't speak on when the new colors will be out on the streets, but I know they're doing their best to keep it going. One thing Paul will not do is just ramp up production to meet demand to sacrifice quality.
Yep.
So it's still a relatively small company comparatively. So they make as many guitars as they can, but it's.
Well, you brought another guitar, so let's take a quick look at that guy.
So sticking with the other bolt-on in the PRS family is the CE, which originally came out in the late 80s, and it was his foray into trying to design a guitar a little less expensive, and for players who like the feel of a bolt-on maple neck.
I like a bolt-on.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
I like the sound of them too.
He, the CE for quite a while was less expensive, but not dramatically. And if you're talking about like in the 90s, early 2000s, buying a custom 24, that was in the high 2000s, around $3,000. A CE was only a couple $100 less. If you couldn't afford that, it probably wasn't enough of a savings. And the guitar didn't have enough of its own identity, so they pulled it from the lineup for a short while and then redesigned it and did some things to try to bring the price point down, and it came back at $19.99. By far the least expensive carved top U.S. built PRS you can get.
Yeah.
And I think what they did actually really improved it. I love the new pickups. I love, they put the steel bridge on it, which to me actually really matches. It's a lot spankier and chimier. It's got more of a twang to it.
Nice.
But what is new to this year, so the CE's been back for a couple years, but now they're offering the CE in a semi-hollow, the single F hole.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so if you're a semi-hollow fan, bolt-on fan, I recommend the CE for anybody who's a single coil player looking to kind of dip their toes in the waters of a humbucker guitar.
Right.
This is because the single coil sounds on this are fantastic. The humbuckers, the 8515s are really clear and articulate. It's not necessarily a vintage sounding humbucker, but they're very sweet. There's no ice pickiness to the top end. There's quite a few demos online to hear one of these. The semi-hollow is a really nice welcome addition to the family.
Yeah, and it was funny. I was talking to Paul about this the other day. It's just a design thing, but it's a thing. Like Paul always pays so much attention to detail.
Sure.
Every instruments are so well thought out. I love the design, just the actual visual of the.
Oh, the pickup bobbins? Yeah.
The pickup bobbins. I mean,
I never thought about it until I saw these, and then now when I see a standard pickup, it's like you look at all that empty space in the corners, and you're like, wow, I can't. I mean, people have built, covered pickups have a cleaner look, and I've always loved the look of covered pickups, and maybe it's just because of that. But I do, and it's not just the shape of the outside of the bobbins, but if you look at the pickup actually has a radius to it.
Yeah.
So it instead of doing staggered pole pieces, the pickup itself, it's a very clean look.
Is this a push pull?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can
push pull in a three-way, which if you get a custom 24, custom 22, it's going to be a 5-way blade switch, which some people prefer. Really quick, you can just instantly flip to the sound you want. I love this setup because I love to get like a straight bridge single coil or straight neck single coil. So it's different flavors for different people.
Yep. So you were mentioning to me, Brian, about besides these two great instruments that Paul's coming out with some other things this year.
Yeah, so there's some new acoustics, a couple new body woods, a couple great signature models. Santana's got an SE single cut 24 fret trem.
Oh, wow.
That's modeled after the guitar he's been playing for the past couple years, which is actually covered in 24 karat gold leaf. You know, Santana, the SE obviously is just gold paint, you know, because it needs to be affordable. But it's awesome. And Paul's personal guitar, the one called the Paul's guitar, which he was here talking to you about, and I'm sure you guys spoke about the pickups and his process of doing that. There's actually an SE version of Paul's guitar new to 2019, which, you know, the TCI S pickups that are voiced the same way. They've updated the carve a little bit so it actually looks closer to the core carve. The SE version of Paul's guitar is incredible. Like you could hand it to most people and they'd have no idea that they're playing an SE.
Right.
So if the regular Paul's guitar is you know, not within your budget, I recommend checking out the SE. It's a wonderful instrument.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a couple of Paul's guitars.
Mm-hmm.
I have an SE, and it's really, I've had it for about 10 years. And I know it's more of the economy model, but I actually like it better.
Yeah, well,
I mean, like some of those more inexpensive models, I don't know, they kill it.
they're great. Well, I think the thing with those is that he holds the SEs to the same standards he holds to the other one. I've seen him, you know, turn away guitars or pull guitars, cut up guitars, and not let them through production because they didn't meet a standard that is the same standard he holds for a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 guitar, where a lot of people would let it slide on a $400 or $500 guitar. So that is part of it. The other thing is that even though they're not made in the factory, every SE comes back to the factory. His team's hands are the last people who have hands on it. So if something's not right, if the nut needs recutting, you know, if there's a problem with the electronics, if it needs a setup, it goes through the same team of luthiers at the Maryland factory. So before it reaches the streets, he wanted to have the last hand on it, and I think that's really where the difference is. Some of the SEs, one of my favorite SEs was they made a soap bar. The soap bar 2 was just such an amazing guitar for the money. I'm amazed all the time at what I pick up. The new SE acoustics look like private stocks, and they sound incredible. It's something else what they can do.
Well, thanks so much, Brian,
thanks for having
stopping
us.
by and bringing us these great guitars. And we're going to be here at the NAMM show all day. Check in for news on all sorts of cool things like the new PRS, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.